Welcome to Shameless Leadership. I'm your host, Sarah Dean. This show is for women leaders who are committed to advancing both their own leadership and the leadership of those around them. In each episode, I offer practical strategies and inspiring stories to help you become a more confident, compassionate, and curious leader. The truth is, you were born to lead. So let's start now, together. Hello, Shameless Leaders. This is our first episode that I get to say, oh my gosh, come join us on YouTube. We have finally gotten around to rolling the show out on YouTube. And when I say we, it's myself and my team and a lot of people behind the scenes creating art and figuring out audio and video and how we're putting this all together and what does it mean to be a YouTube superstar, because that's definitely what's going to happen, right? But we've been putting this together for quite a while now, trying to figure out how we can get the show on YouTube to access more people, to make listening more convenient for more people, and also to make the show more engaging for those of you who want to incorporate a little video into your life. So please go to sarahdean.com/YouTube to watch the show on YouTube moving forward. All episodes from episode 930 moving forward of Shameless Leadership will be up on the YouTube channel. The last 10 or so episodes are up now. So if you want to go and binge watch some stuff on YouTube, you can absolutely do that. And then moving forward, we will just be adding every new episode right into our YouTube channel. So again, that's at sarahdean.com/YouTube. The other thing we've been working on behind the scenes is guest interviews. So I've interviewed a number of people now, and we're going to start rolling those interviews out. So if you're listening in live time, I started these interviews in the winter of 2025. We're going to start rolling them out over the late spring and summer of 2025, starting with this interview today. So as I've been doing interviews, everyone has just been outstanding. Every guest I've had on, and I can't wait for you to start to engage with my special guests, and some of whom are near and dear friends. But I wanted to pick someone really special, really exceptional, who had a fantastic story for our very first released interview. First interview on that's going to be up on YouTube, and also first interview in this format as Shameless Leadership. I've done like 500 interviews before when we were under the Shameless Mom Academy, but this is our first interview in the context of Shameless Leadership, and I could not be more excited to welcome Stephanie Chung to the show. So this conversation is a firehouse conversation. Stephanie Chung is a force to be reckoned with. So let me tell you a little bit about Stephanie and what to expect in this episode. Stephanie Chung is a leader, fighter, survivor, breast cancer warrior, and barrier breaker in corporate leadership who consistently embodies resilience and courage. As a pioneering woman of color in the aviation sector with 35 years of aviation experience, Stephanie has ascended to top executive roles with her tenure as Chief Growth Officer at Wheels Up and the first African-American private aviation company president at Jet Suite, being marked by innovative strategies that significantly expand membership and redefined brand positioning. She led a private aviation sales team that beat their quota of almost $1 billion every year. Stephanie is also a sought-after speaker and #1 international best-selling author whose work in applying neuroscience to sales and leadership offers groundbreaking and practical strategies for professional growth. She has been named, hold on to your horses here, because she's been named a lot of amazing things. So just listen up. She's been named Adweek's Women Trailblazers, Robb Report's 23 Black Visionaries Who Are Changing the Luxury World, WLTH's Top Women in Travel and Hospitality, Savoy Magazine's Americans' Most Influential Black Executives, and DCEO Magazine's Top 500. She's also listed on the Ebony Power 100 and was a contributing columnist for Inc. and for Black Enterprise Magazine. And she's been featured on ABC, NBC, CBS, and more. She's been everywhere. Oh my goodness. When Stephanie and I jumped into our conversation, I just knew like it was going to be fire from beginning to end. And you're going to want to listen more than once. Like we did not miss a beat in this conversation. Stephanie showed up and we got it done. And it was an incredible conversation. So listening to hear Stephanie share all about her 40-year career in aviation, starting at the bottom and working her way up to the very, very top to be president. She talks about how one leader can see something special in someone in their early career that can change everything, because that's what's happened to her when someone saw something special in her early in her career. We talk about long-term career impact of owning your power and your accomplishments in front of your peers and other leaders. She talks about what and how to be powerful and noticeable when advancing your leadership in rooms where people don't look like you, especially. How can you step into these places where people don't look like you? You are the one who is different than everyone else, and still be able to assert power and authority and be noticeable and be seen. She talks about ally leadership, her book, what allyship leadership is and why it's so crucial for today's workforce. She talks about actionable steps that leaders can take to begin leading more equitably and to build trust across more diverse teams. And she talks about how to spot the difference between performative and authentic ally leadership. This is a juicy conversation. It's fun. It's exciting. You're going to want to take some notes. Like I said, you might want to listen more than once. So I'm so excited to introduce you to our first guest of Shameless Leadership, Stephanie Chung. Stephanie, welcome to Shameless Leadership. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I am extremely excited. I think we're going to have a good time.
We are totally going to have a good time. We just had so much fun on our pre-interview that I'm feeling like warmed up and ready to go. So when your team reached out, I just mentioned this to you, but I want to share with our audience. I have an autoresponder. I get pitched 20 times a day for podcast guests. And so your team reached out and I was like, oh, I'm not accepting guest requests right now. Like we're kind of booked up. And then I read the email a little more closely and I was like, hold on, actually, let me take that back. I think we might need Stephanie on the show. So you are here because you have this incredible background, incredible story that I'm so excited to share. You've done things that no one has done before. So we're going to dig into some really special things today. And I know that our audience is going to feel lit up and inspired and excited to follow your energy. So let's go ahead and dive in with, I think the most impressive thing, and what really caught my eye is that you were are the first African-American female president in aviation, which, I mean, that's like Amelia Earhart status. Like this is a big deal. So needless to say, you're known for breaking barriers and blowing past people's expectations of you, maybe even blowing past your expectations of yourself.
For sure.
Yeah. And this is what's, I think, so exciting. And I think this happens a lot in leadership where we do things and then we're like, oh, I didn't know I was going to do that.
That's
I didn't
right.
know
Exactly.
we were going to go there. So you're just such a great candidate for the show and for this conversation. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey and, some of the highlights and what has driven you to be such a revolutionary leader?
Oh, well, thank you for the question. And so happy to answer it. One thing I do want to do is just make a correction, which is I'm not just the first Black female, I'm just the first Black person to ever run and lead a major
Let me
private
update
aviation.
my notes.
Yeah, ever. Yeah, I was like, man and woman, right?
Amazing.
But the first Black person in U.S. history to ever run and lead a major private aviation company. And how I got there, to answer your real question, is I first started off, so I always like to give credit where credit is due, Sarah, which is the fact that my dad, I grew up a military brat. So my dad was a master sergeant in the U.S. Air Force. So I grew up listening to planes take off and land my entire life. I've lived on active Air Force bases since a little girl. And so for me, I knew early on that I wanted to be in aviation. Now, the problem was, though, is I didn't know what I could do in aviation because whenever I would see aviators depicted in TV or film or magazines or anything like that, I would see if you were a man, you were a pilot. And if you were a woman, you were a flight attendant.
Yep.
But the problem was that none of those pictures ever looked like me, right? And so though I knew what I wanted to do, I actually didn't know what was accessible to me because I'd never seen a person of color depicted as an aviator. So very first job that I had, I started off, I was at the rock bottom, right? I started off loading luggage and parking planes at the Boston Logan Airport for one of the major airlines. And then to make extra money, I would go work upstairs at the ticket counter just for overtime pay. So when I was working upstairs one time at the ticket counter, the airline that I worked for had a really big presence in the city of Boston. And so I would see our executives, usually men, flying back and forth and in and out of the city all the time. So I knew who they were because they were the leaders, but I didn't think that they knew who I was. And so one day when I was working at the ticket counter, one of the VPs of sales, his name was Jim came over to me and he said, Stephanie, every time I come to this airport, I see you. I see you with a smile on your face, checking customers in. I think we have you in the wrong position. I think you should actually be in sales. And I was like, I didn't know anything about sales, but I respected Jim. Right.
Yeah.
And so I listened to him. He asked some questions and then from that point on, I started to move up. So I got, put into sales for the airlines. So I sold for the major airlines for many, many years. Then I got recruited into private aviation where I sold private jets, private jet cards, private charter for many years, and then moved up the corporate ladder where I ended up becoming, one of the VPs for a really large private aviation company. Then got recruited to be the president, which is what you were referring to earlier, of a major private aviation company. And then from there, moved into an officer role for a publicly held private jet company. I was on the team that helped them go public as well. And now I'm on a board for a publicly held private jet company. So anyways, I've been in aviation for about 40 different years. And
Wow.
I'm a 40-year overnight success story, I like to say.
I love this story. There's a couple of elements that I want to play with for just a minute. I love that you were, first of all, that you were unknowingly building a brand for yourself, that you were taking on different roles. You were saying yes to things. You're like, yep, I can do that, getting the overtime. And I remember being in my 20s and I worked in a hospital and I was like, overtime anywhere, just
whatever
sign
you
me
need
up.
me to do, right?
Yeah. So that you were a go-getter in that way, but that you were recognized for smiling, going after things. Like people just noticed that you had this presence about you. And when Jim approached you, that first of all, I want to acknowledge, like, we need more Jims who go and see the people who are younger in their careers, the women, people of color, like people who are like, hey, I'm noticing this thing about this person. And then I want to acknowledge that you were able to listen to what he said. And instead of being like, oh no, I could never do that, or that's not familiar, I don't know about that, to be able to hold what he said and hold it as a truth and consider that, like, oh, he thinks I could be good at this. Maybe I could be good at this. Because I think that sometimes we are just really quick to dismiss someone's idea or perception of us, rather than recognizing, like, oh, wait, this person sees something in me. Maybe there's a strength and a talent there that I don't even know about myself. And maybe that's something that I can leverage and use moving forward.
Absolutely. I want you to say that again for the people in the back, right? That is, Sarah, that's the key. A lot of times, I speak for a living. And so I'm always, on the road speaking to companies or speaking at companies and conferences and whatnot. And it's not uncommon. I would say every single conference, especially if it's a women's conference, that this is a question that I get asked a lot. And I really love the fact that you brought it up. What I would say for all of the listeners, certainly I know a majority of your listeners are females, you have to stop second guessing this, right? If you're at the table, it's because somebody saw that you should be at the table, that you had some value to add, and that they're taking a chance on you. And so they're putting you in the room, or they're bringing you to the table. Or in my case, Jim was like, hey, I'm going to encourage you to, put you in a different department, right? All of that is really important. And so what I would really encourage women to have is more of a yes spirit, right? Just like, okay, you know what? Because guys have it, right? Guys are like, yeah, I could do this. Women, we struggle with that. In those days, you just need to make a decision that you're not going to do that any longer. And the decision has to be that if somebody, especially if it's somebody that you respect or somebody higher up than you, they see a potential in you that perhaps you don't see it just yet yourself, then just take their word for it, right? If that's what you've got to do to kind of get this ball rolling, do that, because nothing changes if nothing changes. One thing I would say that's been incredibly helpful in my career is that I have felt the fear, but I did it anyway. And that has made all the difference in the world, because I'm not a brain surgeon, right? So if I make a mistake, likelihood is nobody's going to die, right? And so therefore it's okay to make a mistake, because I believe that failing and making mistakes are two of the quickest ways to learn, actually. As long as you don't let it define you, it's the fastest way to learn, the fastest way to grow, and the fastest way to continue to get promoted.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I also think that women are conditioned to doubt ourselves and to second guess everything and to be really critical of ourselves. And we have this inner dialogue that's on default where we consistently hold ourselves back. For every Jim that says something to us, that says, I see something in you, are 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 more Jims that see the same thing, but they haven't said it out loud. Because we also live in a culture where we're not constantly championing one another. So if one person says that they see something in you, they're very likely one of many people who see that in you. And so I think that even, further amplifies the need to listen to that, do something with that. Like you said, be that yes person.
Exactly. And one thing I want to hit on, Sarah, if it's okay, is to also be all right with sometimes if somebody doesn't see it or say it, and to your point, there is probably somebody seeing it, they just may not say it. Right. But when somebody does say it, so I'll tell you a very quick story. So when I was one of the VPs for this really big aviation manufacturing company, we were all at a conference, and there was like, those conferences where there's 500 people from your company working that one conference. It's such a big show, right?
Yeah.
So we're all there, all the different executives from all the different countries that we represented. And I remember one of the CEOs of a division that I wasn't working for at the time, but I eventually ended up getting put into his division because of several different things. And one of the things I remember when I first met him, he said to me, Stephanie Chung, wow, I've heard some really good things about you. Now, my response was, and there were other people standing around, I was like, thank you. They're all true. Right? And so everybody else stood around me kind of looking like, I can't believe she just said that. But why wouldn't I say that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if he's been hearing good things and I know that I've produced results, then now's not the time for me to go, well, I'm not doing that. It's like, yeah, they're probably all true. And so he started laughing, right? And he goes, good for you. Now, in front of everybody, he says, if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else ever will. Good for you, Steph. That was a great response. Now, I could tell by the way my peers were like, kind of like, taken a little bit back by what I said, that either they were never going to say that, or two, they may have felt like I was a little bit cocky, borderline arrogant in regards to making that statement. But my whole point to the ladies listening is just to say, if somebody, especially somebody of higher level as far as career is concerned, or somebody that you have respect, if they say that they've heard good things, or they see good things, or they think good things of you, don't shy away from it. Lean into it. Confirm what they are already thinking, right? And you do that by saying, thank you so much. I appreciate that. It's all true.
I love this. I love this. I actually caught myself just recently. I was at an event and speaking at an event, and someone came into the speaker room and said something very like, I've heard so much about you. And I was like, oh, like, I hope it was all good. And kind of like, this is what we were conditioned to say, right? And right when I said it, I was like, why did I just say that? Like, that was so dumb. And I love your example. And it's such a good reminder because, again, like these defaults, the things that just come out of our mouths because it's like, this is what everyone else says, or this is what we've been conditioned to say, or it's, it's very culturally acceptable and socially acceptable to downplay our accomplishments, to downplay, how we show up in the world. So thank you. Brilliant. And I think that level of poise and confidence can be career altering, because if we're the person if we're dismissing ourselves in front of one person, we're likely dismissing ourselves in other ways in front of other people. And when that's the habit, we're going to hold ourselves back in many, many ways.
100%. And that particular CEO, the reason why I made a comment is I eventually ended up working on his team, or for him, I should say, one of his divisions, is because of that, right? So that same time that he made that comment, the same show, when, it was probably, I don't know, maybe we'll say 6 months to a year later when I was told, that he wanted to see me in his office, right? And I happened to be, I didn't live in that same town that he was in. I happened to be at headquarters that day. So I went into his office and he basically told me that he wants me to come over and take over this team. And I remember at the beginning thinking, because in my head, I'm like, I don't want to move. This team sucks. You know what I mean? Like so dysfunctional. Like, I don't want to take this team over. I'm good, right where I am. Yeah. And I remember saying to him, like, oh, thank you very much, but I'm really happy where I am and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, no, Steph, I want you to come over and take this team over. It's dysfunctional. It's not performing. I want you to do what you did with your team you currently have. I want you to come here and fix this team. And so, but here's the thing that actually resonated with him. And he told me this. He says, the day that we were working that event, this big show where I said there's like 500 people working there, he said, what I noticed is the executive assistants and the managers, like kind of the lower levels, they were all running around working up a sweat trying to make sure everything was functioning correctly in that particular chalet that we were in. And all the VPs, which I was one of them, were just kind of hanging out, talking to each other. He said, what I noticed about you is you were actually helping the assistants and saying, hey, is there anything I can help you guys with? And I'm trying to help them because they're working so hard. And the managers, and again, all the lower levels were really working hard, and all the higher levels were standing up there talking to each other, not working at all, right? And so he said, I saw, that stood out to him. And on top of everything else he'd already heard, he's the one that brought me over to this bigger division, which then skyrocketed my career. Wow. So my point of saying all that is to say, yes, when people who you respect at higher levels notice you, do not shy away from it. Like, lean into it, because they're not only just noticing you, they're trying to figure out where can I actually place you, because good leaders know good people. They don't really care about what your qualifications are. They just know about your attitude, your work ethic. You know, they can teach you what you got to do, but they're looking for your core competence as far as your character also is concerned. So I want ladies to really step into it. Like, I'm on a mission from God, right? So make sure that women start leaning into their power.
Yeah.
Like, we're done with the self-doubt and all that garbage. Put it aside, step into it, be afraid, but get it done. We got stuff to do, ladies.
Right, right. Yes, absolutely. What advice do you have for other people in their careers who are, regardless of level of leadership, but they're trying to work their way up, and they're in a place where the people, their peers around them or the leaders around them, don't look like them. So whether it's women of color, people with disabilities, and this can also play into invisible differences as well. So we're talking about neurodiversity.
Yep.
But what's your advice in those settings?
Right. So I'll answer it two ways, right? So one is, I come from the private aviation space, and that is I would say I love the industry. The industry has loved me back, but we are an industry that suffers from PMS. We are pale, male, and stale. Okay. So
brilliant.
We got a new way to
and that's
think
also
about
what
PMS,
I would have expected
ladies.
you. Like, I didn't expect it to come out in that acronym, but I was like, I knew we were going in that direction.
So when we ladies, now we can have our secret handshake, right? We're like, oh, how are you doing? I'm suffering from PMS, right?
Yes, yes.
The place is pale, male, and stale. But anyway, so when people are not like you, that's okay, because what that means is you naturally already stand out. Right?
Yeah.
And so instead of shying away from it, lean into it. Yeah. Okay. You're going to remember me because I'm the only one that looks like me, right? In this entire, floor or division or company or building or whatever. And so again, first thing, lean into it. Second thing is, now we can't excuse the fact that you do have to, we were all brought up this way. We know that we've got to just perform. Yeah. Results speak louder than words. And so you must start, it's a game changer if your numbers are not there or your results are not there. So that is that's step one. You've got to make sure your results are there. Step two is, I want everybody to be very proactive about I call it graciously bragging. Right?
Yes.
Bragging about what it is that you've actually done. If you've got results to back up what you're getting ready to say, then you need to say it. Because what happens is, a lot of times people think, oh, I'll just put my head down and everybody's going to notice my hard work. And ladies, let me be the first to tell you, ain't nobody going to notice your hard work. Everybody's too busy. People are just not going to notice it, right? And it doesn't mean that you're not special. It doesn't mean that you haven't worked hard. It doesn't mean anything like that. It just means everybody's running around like their hair's on fire. And so therefore, they just don't have the bandwidth to stop and notice when people are actually, every single person that's doing really great work. So that means that you then have to take on the responsibility of making sure they notice that you're doing really great work. So A, your numbers have to be there. B, you have to be prepared to talk to your boss or people of influence about what it is that you're doing and what the result is that you've gotten accomplished. And that is, anybody who's in either marginalized community or invisible, disadvantages, all of that, this applies to every single one of us, that you've got to be able to articulate what it is that you've been doing successfully, and to keep that pedal, that pedal to the metal with that. Because what tends to happen is usually people they don't actually say what they're doing, and they're just sitting around hoping everybody notices. And then when other people start getting promoted, who probably shouldn't have been promoted over you, but they're more vocal, they speak up, they're more, obvious, right? And they're doing that strategically. That's when you can't just get mad at them or get mad at the process or get mad at the environment. You need to get mad at yourself, because you have to really be proactive about graciously bragging about what it is that you've done.
Absolutely. One of the hardest things about being a business owner, which I've been for 22 years now, is it's like constant self-promotion. And I've had so many moments and seasons where I'm like, maybe I'll get discovered. Maybe they're just going to find me.
Yeah.
And it's such a great exercise, though, in, again, 22 years of practice. It's such a great exercise in having to constantly promote yourself.
That's right.
And really focus on the brand that you're building as a personal brand. But this is a skill that you take anywhere.
Yes.
And when you have the skill, you start to notice the people around you that don't have this skill, and you can see immediately what they're leaving on the table.
Right.
So if I know how to pitch myself, if I know how to get in a room and even not be totally sure of that I have, that I meet all the criteria to be there, but I know that I can confidently take up space in the room to figure out enough to make myself
That's right.
fit in the room. It makes all the difference.
Yes.
And getting into those rooms are what change everything. And so many women and people carrying marginalized identities don't give themselves the opportunity or don't take responsibility for being seen in that way. And it is, it's challenging, it's uncomfortable, it's scary. To your point, you have to do it scared, but it's also like the thing that changes all the other things.
It changes everything. Yeah.
And it feels really good over time.
It
Feels really good over time. It's like it's muscle.
Right.
It's like your gracious bragging muscle.
Yep.
Like you have to pump it up and work it out over time and practice using it. But then you get into a rhythm where you're like, this is who I am. I'm a person who is not going to sit back and wait or let the world happen around me. I'm a person who's going to go make things happen.
That's right. You become, this is who I am, and I'm damn good at what I do.
Yes.
And so you should be, you meaning whoever it is that you're talking to.
Yeah.
If you come in with that kind of level of confidence, and you are 100% right, by the way, Sarah, you don't do it when you get to the room. You start doing it wherever you are. Right. Yeah. So whatever level you're at now, ladies, is when you want to start learning and practicing how to graciously brag about what it is that you do or the results that you can, bring to the table. Right. And so the more you practice it, the easier it becomes. And at the beginning, it's super scary. Right. And that's why I just encourage people, just take that first step, just do it, have the fear. And, I promise you're not going to die when it's all said and done. Right. So each step gets easier and easier and easier. But the reason why this is important is because especially people in general who are trying to get up in their careers, is a lot of times I have people ask me, oh, I'm trying to one day get to the C-suite. And that's really my specialty. It's like how to get you from where you are to the C-suite, right? But one of the things I always tell everybody is if you think that when you get to the C-suite, everybody's going to listen to you, you're in for a rude awakening, right? Because it's just, if you think that their intents of not listening to you at this level, when you get to this level, it is like game on. It's an entirely different discussion, and it's intense, and everybody's there because everybody's really good and everybody's got strong opinions and whatnot. So what I always encourage people to do is to grow where you're planted. So wherever you are now, practice using your voice, practice, standing up for yourself, practice being the person who makes people think in a different directions. Like they could say, well, Sarah, I hear your point there, but I don't know that I agree with that. Here's how I see it, right? Practice doing those things because different level, different devil. So if you are not getting better or using your voice at the level that you're at, I would actually go out on a limb, and I hope you don't hate me. I'm going to tell you, ladies, don't go any higher. If you can't use your voice now, do not try to get higher because it is a dogfight. The higher you go, and you've got to be able to use your voice. And the higher you go, there's probably less of you, which means that the whole rest of us really need you to use your voice because if not, you're now a clog in the system, right? And we don't need you there if you're not going to help clear the way for others.
Absolutely. I do think it gets, I don't know if easier is the right word. It becomes more automatic. So it becomes more automatic that you use your voice. It can become easier because you get more comfortable being loud and you get more comfortable taking up space. So the stakes might be higher. So you might still be nervous or uncomfortable. But I think that, and I've had this, it becomes like an ethical dilemma to me at times where when you start to be a person who uses your voice in different ways, then you recognize that you can't not speak up when you see certain things happening.
100%.
And so things are happening around you and you're like, oh, I really don't want to get involved in that. Like, I'm tired. It's been a long week. But you're like, but like, I'm a person who speaks up.
That's right. Yeah, I'm that girl, right?
So like, I'm not going to stand by this. But so it really becomes a habit, I think.
Yes.
And so, which does come with some ease over time. So yes, I think that we don't want to make it sound like it just keeps getting scarier and scarier, because I think it does because it's a habit, it becomes more automatic.
Yes.
And you build confidence around that. I think you build confidence
Yes.
around, like, I can speak up. It might go well, it might go awful, but I'm going to be okay either way.
That's right. That's right. Because going back to nobody's going to die in this process,
Yes.
right?
Exactly.
So
We're
you're
all
right.
going to
And
survive.
that's right. And I would actually say that you're probably right, Sarah. I would say as you do it more often, it actually does get easier, right? It's like decision making. You know,
Yeah.
and the secret to making good decisions is making good decisions. Like, that's the secret. The secret to winning is winning, right? Like, you know, the more you do it, the easier things get. And so the more you get used to feeling the fear and doing it anyway, the
Right.
easier it gets, because you can always back up everything that you're saying. And that's why I always start with the game. Point one is you have to have the results, right? Because now whenever you say something, you're bringing receipts. Like, you know what you're talking about, and therefore you have been given, well, not given the right, you're perhaps maybe taken the right to actually say what it is that you've got to say, because you're adding value. I don't want anybody in there just talking for the sake of talking, because nobody likes that person. But what you do want to do is when you're in the room and you do say something, it should be because you're adding value, because you probably see it differently, especially if you're the only one in that room that is either female or maybe has neurodiversities or disabilities or person of color, whatever. You probably see things a little bit differently than the majority of the folks who are in the room. And that's the value you actually bring to the table.
Yeah.
So we all need you to share that, because it will bless everybody and the company. But if you don't say it because you're focused on your fears, which is really a self-centered act, then it now becomes a bigger issue.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to encourage people, if you haven't done this in a while, or maybe you've never done it, when you say, like, bring the receipts and have those, like, in your back pocket, I want to encourage people to take 5 minutes like today and literally, like, what are your receipts? Like, what are those accomplishments? What are the metrics? What are the numbers? What are the results that you've had? What are the things that make you, what are your differentiators? The things that make you, your unique talents. I think that we're, again, especially as women, just not good at being able to identify those things. And once we can identify them and have, here's the top things that make me different than anyone else, where no one can compete with me, especially if I put these 5 things together, then, like, you can put me in any room and I might not measure up to the dude standing next to me and any of his strengths, but I can tell you how I can outperform him because of the 5 things I have in my back pocket. And so I think that is we have to know those receipts, like, back of our hand at all times.
That's right. So good, Sarah. So good. You've got, and just take 5 minutes. Just look at them, study them, and have, like, your little cheat sheet. So whenever you need to bring them back to memory, you can just rattle it off. I'm Stephanie Chung. Here's what I do. Here's what other people have hired me in the past. Boom, boom, boom.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So
Yep. Love it. Okay. We have to talk about ally leadership.
Yes, my favorite subject these days.
Your book, which is so conveniently placed right in the background of right behind you. It's so perfect. So let's talk about ally leadership. Explain what ally leadership is and why it's so crucial in today's diverse workforce.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I wrote this book, Ally Leadership. Ally, by the way, is an acronym. So it stands for Ask, Listen, Learn, You Take Action. And so that's why it's called ally leadership, right? Because I do believe this is the new form of leadership for the 21st century. And here's why. When you think about today's modern workforce has a lot of different dynamics happening, and it's really got leaders, all different types of leaders. Every industry, every leader is dealing with, how do I recruit top talent, retain top talent, and attract top talent, right? Everybody's dealing with that. But when you think about the modern workforce, right now we've got 6 generations at work, which has never happened. So average age of workforce now is anywhere from 16 to 75. And really what that means is, we all know boomers may not think the same as, like, a Gen Z, a Zoomer, right? And then everything in between. So 6 generations at work, all the generations think differently, have a different perspective and different expectation. Then we have women. We're now the majority of the population. So that changes the dynamics, because we see things differently, we communicate differently, et cetera. Then we have every ethnic group is growing, and the non-ethnic group is shrinking. So that changes the dynamics in the workplace as well. And then, as you mentioned earlier, we've got neurodiversity, we've got people with different able-bodied folks, we have LGBTQ plus community. We have a plethora of things going on in today's modern workforce. And really what that means is leaders are having to figure out how to lead people who are not like each other, and they're not like them. And so this isn't a race, gender, sexual orientation type of thing. It is an everyone thing, right? So whether you're in leadership now or you're being led by someone who's not like you, right? All of us, all of us are having to deal with this because this is the new norm. And so I wrote the book to really encourage leaders. I come from an industry where no one looked like me, sounded like me. You know, I truly was the one and only for many, many years, and yet was still able to get to the highest level. And so the book is really a combination of practical tips of how to do it, but then also stories of when I did it really well and stories of when I absolutely missed the mark on it and I did horribly, right? And my whole goal of writing the book is I understand leadership is hard. I know it's tough, right? And so this is almost a love letter to leaders saying, listen, this is how I did it, in hopes that some of this will help you as well. The second piece to this I also want to just mention is, before I wrote the book, you know, what I thought was that every book that was out there was really geared towards white men, right? It was like, hey, white guy, here's how you lead women. Here's how you lead people of color. And so I felt like the conversation needed to go deeper and wider, right? Yeah. Yes, we certainly want to, arm white men and give them the tools instead of beating them over the head because they, made a misstep or they got it wrong. Let's give them the tools necessary to know how to actually do it. Because if not, then they start self-anointing themselves, right? Oh, I'm an ally. It's like, okay, well, based on what, right? Like, give me some receipts to back up what you just said. And this used to drive me bananas because whenever I'd be out on the speaking circuit talking, a lot of times men would come to me afterwards and say, Steph, I love it. I'm great. I am an ally. I'm married to the same woman. I'm a daughter. I'm a girl dad, right? I'm a strong supporter of women, let's say. And my response is always the same. I love that. Thank you so much. We need strong supporters. So tell me, what is it that you've done this week to show your support to women? Right. And Sarah, you know what? Crickets. They can't rattle off anything, right? So you can't just call yourself an ally. Other people can call you an ally,
yes,
but you can't self-anoint yourself and say, I'm an ally, right? I can't go, I'm a nice person. Like, based on what? Like, you could say, I met Stephanie, she's a really nice person. I can't say that, right? And so that's how I want allies to realize is you can't self-anoint. This isn't the 4-H club where everybody gets a ribbon. That's not what we're doing here. The only way that you're going to be called an ally is if someone actually sees you take action to show your allyship, right? Yes. So that's why the book is called Ally Leadership. Ask, listen, learn, you take action. And it's all about, for all of us, not just white men, for every single person who's in leadership or wants to be a leader. This is the new way to lead this new workforce. And that means you've got to truly understand how to lead people who are not like you.
Absolutely. I also want to call out white women as one of them, because we also, I think, and I live in Seattle. Very, very progressive city. I'm so grateful that I live here and not other parts of the country right now. Yeah. If I have to be in this country right now, I'm so glad I'm here. But, a city full of white women who identify as allies. And what you said, I think, really hits home that allyship, it's not just about men who, everything that you said is not just relevant to men who self-identify as allies. I would say the same thing for white women. Yes. That it is also not up to me as a white woman to identify as an ally. It is up to whoever I happen to be in proximity to, and for them to decide if the way I'm showing up, the decisions that I'm making, the way that I'm holding space for them and interacting and engaging, if that is me in the role of allyship to them, or not. And I think that we have to be clear. We talk about this, I think, so much with white males, but the power that white women have and what they have done and sometimes not done with that can't be ignored, and we're not excused. Like this, I think we have to be as accountable, if not more accountable. And we haven't always done a great job of that.
Wow, that was powerful. I mean, I can't say that, but I'm definitely picking up what you're laying down, right?
I was like, I'm sure Stephanie doesn't want to be like Sarah as a white woman. So let me just call myself out and all of us.
Thank you for saying it, and say it louder for the people in the back, because it really is that it's such, I mean, that's a whole different podcast that we could do, because that's really, really important. And right now we've got a bit of a divide, right? Between just women in general, women of color versus white women. It's just like, I don't know. I do know how we got here, but we've got to fix this and figure it out. And so thank you very much, Sarah, for saying that. It's not something that I certainly can say. I'm not a white woman, but I certainly, as a person who's not a white woman, would totally agree with 100% of what you said.
And I'll also say, as a white woman who's done work in this space for a number of years now, pre-2020, that I've messed it up a whole bunch of times.
Sure.
I have been like, I got it and I'm on it and I know what I'm doing and I'm saying the right things, and then I've totally said the wrong thing. So it's not like, it's going to be fumbly and messy, and but that's part of the work, and that's part of the really important part. And going back to your amazing acronym, Ask, Listen, Learn, You Take Action, like when we make a mistake, when I make a mistake, I can go right through that acronym, right? So I probably just teed you right up to talk more about that. But if I would love to hear you talk a little bit more about how we can engage that acronym and put it into action.
Well, one of the things I like that you said is we all make mistakes, right? And so, right now we're talking about wet women, but in my book, I actually talk about a mistake that I made. There are several different mistakes that I made, but and so I go into great detail. And here's to answer your question. Here's one of the things that I think will be encouraging for all of us is. It's a head and heart issue, right, is how I like to describe it. When we think of being an ally, it truly is a head and heart issue. So the head part is super simple. Am I doing this, this, and this, like the tactics, right? And the heart issue is a little bit different because it's all about the technique, right? How am I doing it, right? Am I doing it? And then how am I doing it? And so what we can do, all of us, as a person who wants to be an ally to, everybody, anybody, if that's our goal, is the very first thing that we'll want to do is, it sounds so simple to say, just ask, listen, and learn. But the truth is, a lot of us don't do just basic, simple stuff, right? Which is ask, because we're so afraid of making a mistake. And so therefore, we'll assume, right? I'm not going to ask you. I'm just, because I don't want to feel embarrassed that maybe I'm asking the wrong question or asking it the wrong way. And so instead of asking you, I'm just going to assume, and I'm going to do things my way based on my upbringing, my experience, my perception. And that's when the train goes off the tracks. Okay.
Yeah.
Because if in fact you want to be a really great leader or a really great ally leader, then it's going to require you to realize that you don't know everything. You have one way of doing it, but it's one way, right? It's not the only way, it's one way. And that one way is based on your experience. Now, all of a sudden, you're trying to invite somebody else into the tent, or you're trying to go into their tent based on their experience, which the very first part of being an ally is to realize that you don't know what you think you know. So if you go in eyes wide open and you're saying that on the front end, like I'll give you an example. One of the stories in the book, I talk about a situation where I had my first time I ever met with someone. It was like 30 years ago, and the person was a transgender. And I'd never even heard the word transgender. I didn't even know what it was, right? I'd never heard the word, didn't understand what, I knew nothing going into this, totally blind. And it was a mutual friend that actually set up the meeting because this person had questions about getting into a particular career. And so we had lunch. And I opened up the lunch saying, listen, I'm so happy to meet you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about XYZ career and company, and however I can help you, I'm happy to do it. But let me just say this. I don't know what I don't know. I'm pretty sure during this conversation, unknowingly, and certainly not, that I'm going to say something that could possibly be offensive to you because I don't know. And so if you could, when I do, if you could stop me and correct me right then and there, I would really be so grateful. Right? So I'm coming in, letting you know, I don't know, like this, I've never even heard the word, right? I don't know what I don't know. And so the odds of me saying something, not on purpose to be offensive or hurtful, but just because I don't know, I've got one viewpoint, right, is pretty wide open. And so I'm going to say that. I'm putting my heart on the table saying, I don't know. Now, what I'm also asking you to do is to, one, give me a little bit of grace because I'm trying to learn. But two, if I say something stupid, don't let it just roll, right? Like stop me because I've asked you to stop me. And at that point, because I don't want to say something stupid the next time I have a conversation with somebody else, right? And so So being open and honest, because what I find is any of us from marginalized groups, we know when your heart is truly there and you're really trying to be an ally and you maybe just made a misstep. And we know that, or if it's just a performative thing that you're just doing to say you're an ally, but you don't really care, we can tell the heart and head issue, right? And so what I find is most people would much rather you have a conversation with them, just like the one I just did, versus not talking to them at all, because either A, you assume you know everything, right, which is a form of privilege that drives people bananas anyway, or because you're afraid of making a mistake and therefore you're just going to like, okay, nothing to see here, you know what I mean? So we really have to be very vulnerable. And the good thing is we women we're usually pretty good at that, right? We're pretty open, like this is how we're seeing things and feeling, et cetera. That is our competitive advantage. And that was what really sets us up to be really great leaders, because we just want everybody to win, right? It's not like I win and you lose. That typically isn't the standard for women leaders. And so all of this can be used in a good, powerful way. But yes, in order to be a good ally, it sounds simple to ask, listen, learn. But the truth of the matter is most of us don't do a really good job truly asking, truly listening, not listening with the intent to be able to answer, but listening with the intent to learn. And then, once you ask, listen, and learn, now you're held hostage to actually take action, right? Because it does no good if you just listen and learn and you're like, okay, I learned all that. But if you don't actually act on what you've learned, then it doesn't move the ball forward for any of us.
Absolutely. I love that example so much. And I think that when we're scared and we are worried that we're going to do or say the wrong thing, or we were going to make someone uncomfortable, that you mentioned earlier, we operate from this place of assumptions, and that's where we really get in our own way. We get really messy, we get really awkward, and then like things can really implode or explode from there. And I think when you have and it's like a values demonstration, that like the person that I am as a leader is the person that shows up vulnerably in a moment to say, I don't know what I don't know. Like that's a values demonstration right there. And so I think that's such a great takeaway and something that we can all use, even if it feels a little uncomfortable. Again, it's, maybe a new muscle. And I will also say that I've actually used that technique multiple times in interviews, interviewing over 500 people now on the podcast over the last 9 years. And there's been so many times where I've interviewed people and been like, I'm sure I'm going to say the wrong thing, especially when we're having really sensitive conversations. And every time I say like, hey, please let me know if I say or do the wrong, I want to learn, I'm likely going to be fumbly. The trust that's immediately built advances the relationship really quickly, so that we can start in such a different place than if I just don't say anything. Like if there's no acknowledgement of what I don't know or me being vulnerable or anything like that, it's a totally different conversation. It's a different relationship then. So.
100%. And that's what actually helps you as well get prepared to be a leader that has a legacy. Right?
Yeah.
Or an entrepreneur that has impact, or, all of those little micro muscles that we're using is what really sets up to be something that's extraordinary, or something that people are like, oh, wow, looking up to you. That's the stuff that makes the difference. It's not the other stuff, right? Everybody's doing the other stuff. It's the little nuances that truly make the difference, that give you that competitive advantage.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, Stephanie, this time is going way too fast. I want to talk for like 5 more hours. I want to know how are you hoping leaders will take hope away in reading this book? And I want to acknowledge, especially in this season where hope feels real hard to come by.
Yeah. Oh, God.
How are you hoping that readers will find hope in the book?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I love is right now there is, at least in the U.S., it's just chaotic right now. It's just absolute chaos. And that can really make people feel hopeless. But people don't attack those things that are not a threat. Right. And so where I want people to feel encouraged is all the things that are being currently attacked, especially as women, let's just say, and certainly people of color. It's because we're winning. That's the only reason why you attack stuff is when you're actually winning, right? And so that's the encouragement. What I want people to take away from the book is this is not a either or. this is a must, that you're going to, just because the world is changing so incredibly fast, that you're going to be leading people that are simply just not like you. And that's a good thing. The conversation about diverse teams, they're 25% more profitable. They get a 70% better innovation rate. They've got 35% more marketability as far as increasing market share. I mean, the list can go on and on and on. Google anything about diverse teams and you're going to find the positive results that come out of it. And McKinsey has done studies, Deloitte's done studies, Harvard Business Review's done studies. So we don't need to have a conversation about whether a diverse team is effective or not. It's effective. Jury's out. That deal's been closed. Only good leaders are going to want to have teams that have a diverse perspective. Certainly, yes, diversity in gender and race, but also communication style and thought process. Like diversity is diversity, right? Mm-hmm. So every leader needs to have a diverse team because diverse teams simply outperform traditional teams. Now, on the flip side of that means whether you're leading a team or one day you want to lead a team, you want to become that leader that has a reputation for being able to lead everybody. And that's what the point of this book is, because everybody is in the workforce right now. And so the leaders that know how to lead everybody and get the best out of everybody, they're going to be the leaders whose marketability, their personal brand's marketability is going to be huge. What does that mean? More money for you, greater opportunities for promotion, you getting different type of projects and assignments because you simply know how to perform and you have the results and you know how to lead all types of people. I would say today's leader needs to lead all God's children, every race, every creed, every gender, right? Like that's the job itself. So that's what I hope that people will read and to understand that if I want to be a leader who remains relevant, I'm going to have to know how to lead people who are not like me, which is pretty much everybody. And so how do I do it? Instead of running away from it or trying to drag your feet with it, really leaning into it and realizing that right now it's still early. And if you can get on board the train now, this is going to give you a competitive advantage and a big enough runway that will make the difference. Because my focus is how do we change the look and feel of today's corporate leadership? How do we change that, C-suite? And that simply means we get more diverse voices who are there at the top level or in the boards making where major decisions are being made, that we have every voice at the table.
Yes. Can you hold the book up so that people can see it on camera for folks on YouTube? Mm-hmm. Gorgeous. Love it. Love it so much. So, and then people can get the book on Amazon. And I went and took a sneak peek to see that you also have the audiobook and you narrated it yourself, which is my absolute favorite. Mm-hmm. I am a big audiobook person. I have ADHD and I loved an audiobook on 1.2 speed. Or sometimes 1.5, depending on the narrator. But for my audience if you're busy or if you just consume better via audio, or there's also, of course, you can get the hard copy. Mm-hmm. So there's those options. Tell folks where else they can find you and connect with you and engage with you in your work.
Thank you. So on all my socials, I'm pretty much on all the socials. It's at the Stephanie Chung. You can go to my website, stephaniechung.com. And also because of the type of audience that you have, I would highly encourage people also to go to my Substack. It's some of my best work there. Yep. And it's literally called Your Ally in Leadership. So you can do yourallyinleadership.com and still get the Substack that way. Or if you're familiar with Substack, it's Your Ally in Leadership. That's really where my focus is I want to run alongside those folks who are either currently in leadership or want to become leaders. I want to run alongside them and teach them the science of leadership and success. And that's what makes ours a little bit different, is we spend a lot of time on the neuroscience of leadership and success, so that because we tend to talk about it from a do this, do that, do the other. But my particular passion is, well, what is the brain actually? How are we wired? And how knowing that helps us be better at doing this, doing that, et cetera. So Your Ally in Leadership is where I would highly encourage people. It's a free newsletter. If they want to get more involved with me, there's other ways to do that. But, the free one, it works as well. And that's just a great place to get fed information that will help you be more successful as you do this career journey in life.
Yeah. I'm totally going to go subscribe. I'm so excited.
Awesome.
So we will link up everything in the show notes. So people go to the Shameless Leadership podcast, either on your podcast listening platform, or you can go to sarahdean.com/podcast, click on the episode with Stephanie Chung, and we'll have all these links dropped in there, all your socials, the book, the Substack, your website, everything. Last question. How are you currently showing up as a shameless leader?
Well, I think probably just people watching me on this thing. I am pretty non-apologetic, right? About I'm very specific on what it is that my strengths are and what I feel like I'm called to do and what my purpose is, and I'm passionate about it. And so, because of that, I'm a shameless leader because I say my yes is my yes, my no is my no. If I've got something to say, I say it because I understand the power of using my voice, not just for me. I've already hit the levels that I was looking for. Now it's all about how do I leave a legacy? And part of the legacy is going to be about being significant, right? And the significance comes from being able to really clear the way and to show the way and to kind of lead the way for other people who are looking, who say, you know what, I'm good at what I do, but I want to be great. Or I'm great at what I do, but I want to be elite. And so that's the tribe I'm really focused in on, not the ones who are like, they're the ones who are more, I always tell people, I'm a great leader for I'm not a great leader for entry level. I'm not because I'm super direct, but I'm a great leader for people who are like, no, I'm willing to do the work. I'm not afraid of it. Like, teach me how to do it and I'll do it. That's where my sweet spot is, because as long as you're willing, I'll give you the time, energy, and effort because I know how to do it. And so, yes, my biggest thing is I'm probably, because I'm so direct and clear on what it is that I'm called to do and how I want to help people who feel like they can line up with that calling. That's how I lead as a shameless leader, as you will.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you. Oh my goodness, Stephanie, this was so fun. We could have talked forever. You might have to come back a second time.
I would love that. I feel like I've met my new best buddy. So are you kidding me?
I know. Well, when you said brain science, I'm like, oh, now I want to talk about that. So we might have to do it again. I really loved this. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your incredible work. I hope everyone goes and gets the book and subscribes on all your channels and to your Substack. And I can't wait to keep track of what you're doing and follow your work and your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Sarah. This was so fun. I appreciate you.
Thank you for allowing me to spend time in your ear today. If you liked this episode, be sure to subscribe to this channel. To learn more about my speaking, training, and coaching services, visit saradean.com. That's SARADEAN. I would also love for you to connect with me on LinkedIn at saradean.com/LinkedIn or on Instagram at saradeanspeaks. I love hearing from my listeners. Thank you for showing up for yourself today. I see you, I hear you, and I'm holding space for you today and every single day.